Hi, everyone, and welcome back. We live in such a fast paced world, and especially in the Caribbean, we have a sort of a hustle culture where we try to do so many things or we juggle a lot of different things, we wear many hats, and we tend to put a very important aspect of well being on the back burner. So we focus on our nutrition, we focus on physical activity, but another aspect that we tend to neglect and we don't even think about it until something happens later on, and that is simply, or not even simple, sleep. We tend to forget and not prioritize sleep, and that is an important aspect of our overall health and well-being. To have this conversation with me today, I have Aneisa Singh from ISD Solutions. Welcome, Aneisa.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Aneisa, can you tell our listeners a bit about yourself as well as what your organization, what they do?
Sure. So my name is, as Josan introduced, Aneisa Singh. I am the executive assistant to the clinical director of ISD Health Solutions. And we are a company that we prioritize bridging the gap in the awareness and education surrounding the importance of sleep. We educate about the prevalence of sleep disorders, and most importantly, we provide the treatment and testing solutions for these disorders.
Well, that's really great. Aneisa, since you're an expert in this arena, I must ask, do you actually prioritize sleep every night?
I try my best. I mean, even though we work in the field of sleep, we don't necessarily always have a hand on it, because just like how every day is different in life, every night is different, every night of sleep. Life changes and every circumstance, can impact what happens at night, the quality of sleep that you get. So though I do try my best, I don't think it's guaranteed every day or every night, if I'm being honest, but
we try our best. As you said, we have good intentions sometimes, but it doesn't always happen that way. Would you also then agree with me that we do have a sort of a hustle culture in the Caribbean where, we try to do so many things and we don't prioritize sleep at all? Sometimes, we may take a quick 2-3 hours and then we're going again. We drink coffee or something that's highly caffeinated to kind of compensate for us feeling fatigued, and that goes on for quite some time until sometimes, for me personally, you do crash or you do burn out at some point.
Crash or burnout, a wake-up call. In the Caribbean, we definitely have a hustle culture. In fact, I think since we were all young, it's been embedded into our heads the whole notion of I'll sleep when I'm dead. Most of us grew up with that mindset based on observing our parents or our grandparents, and we just grew up looking at that example, and nobody really took the time to understand exactly how important sleep is, not only for just it being a state of rest for us, but for also it being a process by which so many aspects within our bodies, it's rejuvenated, reparation takes place, and even and just for the sake of being fully refreshed and prepared for the next day.
Agreed, and you're right. It was instilled in us from such a young age, and if I think back to it now, from as early as primary and secondary school, you go to school all day, and then in the night you have to stay up to do your studies, do your homework, and sometimes that goes way beyond into the night, and then you find yourself getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and that also translates into university, and we keep going like that until we start to work, and then it gets worse from there because you tend to take your work home, or you have everything that you need to get done at home now, and it keeps pushing back that window of sleep for you.
Exactly. I think it falls in line as being almost for Caribbean persons like ourselves, it's like a badge of honor that
Yes.
You work very hard, and the fact that you are not sleeping at many hours at night means that you're putting in the extra work, you're burning the midnight oil. But to be honest, when you burn that midnight oil, the exact same thing that you have been sacrificing your sleep for may not even be to the capacity that you would want it, because you have missed out on sleep. Because what we need to realize, I would say, is that sleep is a time frame that was ordained for us to partake in, for our bodies, our minds, our organs, to have that time to really recuperate, to consolidate whatever needs to be, and to also prepare our resistance, even to just pursue life and to, handle everything that we need to, whether it be to fight against, common diseases, common flus, etc., to help us remember everything that we would have been studying for that exam, preparing for that meeting the next day, and even for just general focus on the job. Because a lot of some of the accidents that we see on the job, sometimes even those car accidents, is really due to lack of sleep or sleep deprivation.
It's great that you mentioned that, because sometimes when we think about sleep, we don't understand fully how much it affects. We usually think it's just a means to, be well rested the next day, as opposed to it affecting so many different aspects of our lives. And as you mentioned, it affects your mood, it affects your alertness, but it also affects so many different systems within our bodies. And one of them that some persons may not know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it affects your immune system.
It definitely does.
It negatively affects your immune system, so you are now putting yourself at risk for catching the common cold faster. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, a lot of this is it leans on the processes of sleep that actually that happen throughout the course of the night once we're getting that quality sleep. So when you begin to sleep, right, there are 4 major processes that take place. So you first go into what is called the N1 or light sleep realm. This is where we're now drifting off into sleep.
So you're now dozing off, basically.
Yeah, so if somebody tries to wake you up, then it's a little easier for you to kind of be somewhat aware that they're calling you, even though you're dozing, but it's that first step. The next stage now is where it is we go into the N2 phase. So this is where our body temperatures drop, our heart rate slows. So your body is getting prepared for deep sleep. Now, deep sleep, this is the part where it is all the reparation within our bodies take place. So you find tissues are repairing itself, our immune system is being strengthened, and hormones being balanced within that phase. So a lot of the internal functionings of our body, what needs to be done, or what we will call the consolidatory time period for our bodies, it happens only really during our sleep. And then further to that deep sleep, then you have what we call REM sleep. Now this is where you begin dreaming. This is the dream stage of sleep. So your emotional well-being, there's balance. You find this is where learning processes and all these aspects of the components of your brain, that is what takes place during this time. Everything, it's really a period where it says we get to consolidate, we get to repair, we get to rejuvenate, and this does not happen if it is we are sacrificing the time that we're supposed to be sleeping. Because if it is we only sleep 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, our body is not getting enough time to enter those phases of sleep properly.
So we enter the 4 phases. Does that happen? I know that's one cycle.
Yeah.
We go through the cycle quite a number of times in the night,
2,
right?
3 times. It all depends how long you allow yourself to sleep for, whenever next you have to wake up. But once you are properly well oxygenated while you're sleeping, and the process of you falling asleep and staying asleep remains undisturbed, these processes have a chance to properly develop. And this is what leads us to waking up feeling a bit more refreshed. Yeah, we may feel a bit tired, but not as like you're feeling as though you haven't slept for the past 8 hours, even though you did.
And then it's like 7 o'clock in the morning and you're already yawning and you're feeling so tired, you can't focus. And just to go back to something that you mentioned earlier, when you don't get enough sleep, that alertness, it's not there. And we live in a country where the traffic, it's ridiculous. And some persons commute for long hours every day. The commute is long. So those persons, for example, who may be doing, let's say, San Fernando to Port of Spain or Princeton to Port of Spain, and you're sitting in traffic, you didn't get enough sleep, and then you're in bumper to bumper traffic, the chances of you actually, getting into an accident and not being able to focus is really high.
Very high. And to be honest, if it continues like that, and if you, by the time you get home, you don't really prepare your mind and your body for that time period of sleep, it really is just a matter of time before it is you have a serious wake-up call to actually remind you that what you are sacrificing in the evening is something that is definitely going to catch up to you.
Mm-hmm. And honestly, I've personally experienced that, the no sleeping, and then you're trying to drive and then something happens on the road where you need to react quickly, and then you don't, and that is where the issue comes in. And that's just one instance. The lack of alertness could have so many negative effects throughout the day in many different scenarios. Now, to go back to where you were speaking about the different cycles, and that's given that persons don't have any sorts of condition or disorder, what are some of the common disorders that are associated with sleeping?
So, main disorder, the two most prevalent, I would say, are sleep apnea and insomnia. Now, there are over 1 billion people in this world, and about 1/4 of that amount is suffering with sleep apnea. It's not like a toothache. Right. So it's not something that is going to, it's going to tell you need to go to the doctor now to check this. It's like a silent killer. It slowly but surely creeps in at your sleep, and it takes away from your alertness. It takes away from your ability to withstand the entire day with full energy, with full vitality. And a lot of people aren't aware that it exists and exactly what it is. So the most common one we have really is obstructive sleep apnea. And this is where there are pauses or interruptions in your breathing numerous times a night while you're asleep. Now, this obstructive sleep apnea is a bit more, sometimes it can be a bit more physiological, where there is a palate at the back of your throat that, there's a palate at the back of your throat that relaxes sometimes when it is you're sleeping too much, and it closes off the airway, preventing you from retaining or absorbing as much oxygen as you can get while you're sleeping. And when the oxygen tries to squeeze through that little small airway space, it triggers what we call this rattling sound that we commonly know as snoring.
Oh, yes, okay.
So, and the louder it is, the louder your snore is. And even sometimes what happens with a lot of people with sleep apnea, they stop breathing throughout the course of the night. Now, all those processes that I spoke about, if it is your body is not being oxygenated enough while you sleep, and within that fact of not being oxygenated, what will happen is, if it is you stop breathing throughout the course of the night, your body is naturally going to wake up because it's going to enter fight or flight mode instead of being in rest mode. So once you're in that mode, it's going to wake you up out of your sleep, interrupting the processes that I spoke about before. And if it happens a couple times per night, you're going to realize by the time you wake up and you have to function for the next day, you're feeling tired, as though you've never slept, even though you did. So it really and truly robs you from everything that is supposed to happen within your body. So immune system is what it is we spoke about. That becomes severely diminished or undercapacitated because you're not getting enough time for your body to recuperate itself to make you strong enough to withstand against whatever may pass by. Aside from that, you may find yourself forgetting very often because memory consolidation is not taking place because you're not entering that phase of sleep. And of course, your alertness, you're constantly tired. Many different things happen that can really affect your day-to-day life because you have sleep apnea. What a lot of people don't realize is that this lack of oxygen while you're sleeping, it starts to interrupt a lot of the bodily functions that take place, where it pertains to the onset of diabetes, where it pertains to high blood pressure and how it's caused, and even Alzheimer's. right? So a lot of what the non-communicable diseases that we deal with on a regular basis, that we know we lose a lot of family members to, a lot of it can actually be nipped in the bud by prioritizing or taking a closer look at how it is you sleep, your sleep quality, and if there even exists a sleep disorder like sleep apnea.
That's very interesting. You also mentioned sleep quality, and I think a lot of the time we tend to focus on the quantity of sleep as well. Like if we do check, okay, I need, for those persons to check, I need 5 hours, 6, 7, 8 hours. We forget to mention that it's not just the quantity of sleep that's important, but the quality of sleep as well.
Exactly.
Now, to go back to what you were saying in terms of the sleep apnea, what can persons do then if they do sort of, realize that, hey, this resonates with me. Maybe I have this disorder and I probably need to seek help. What do persons do in that instance?
So the first thing, ideally, you would talk to your healthcare provider, of course. But this is where ISD Health Solutions, I would say, comes in, because this is what we specialize in. So everything with us starts with a free sleep consultation, which actually counts as sleep screening. So, and think about it this way: you would screen for every other health issue that we know of or that we are told is a major priority. So we would screen for cholesterol, we'll screen for pressure, we'll screen for diabetes. The same way we have to screen for sleep disorder, which can actually be at the root of all of those issues there. So it starts off with a simple form online where it is you just fill it out, and it really is to give us a gauge, and even you yourself, as to what is really happening in your sleep. What are your experiences? What do you suffer with? And if this will actually be an inclination that you might be suffering or dealing with a sleep disorder. Now, further to that, now, what you would need to do, just like how you would have to test to see if you have any of those other issues, same way you're going to have to test to see if it is you have a sleep disorder, like whether it's sleep apnea, whether it's insomnia. And to do that, we provide some of the most technologically advanced and innovative solutions that you can just test in the comfort of your own home. So it's not gone are the days where it is you have to go to a sleep lab or in another
and do a sleep test.
Exactly, and have a whole bunch of wires hooked up to you, and then you will get to know whether you have a sleep disorder or not. No, it's as simple as putting a little device on your finger, and that is going to be checking the parameters of your sleep while you're sleeping, and it connects to a little app where it is you're going to be able to read the report of what is generated over 2-3 nights of sleeping, that you're going to be easily able to download and share with your healthcare provider.
That sounds easy.
Yep.
Very easy. So we touched on sleep apnea. In terms of insomnia, what do persons usually experience when they have that sleep disorder?
Of course. So insomnia is where you have difficulty falling and or staying asleep. Now, this one is something that is a bit more behavioral oriented, because it affects our mood, it affects our anxiety levels, it affects, it's triggered by stress mainly. A lot of people who deal with insomnia is generally stress related. However, there is a close connection between sleep apnea and insomnia. Those who may have sleep apnea underlying can also experience effects of insomnia as a byproduct of having that. So in insomnia, the treatments that we offer, or the solution for it, to decipher whether or not you have it, it's the same process with the sleep screening. However, this one is a bit more, we like to call it non-invasive. So you don't take any sort of medication for it. What we offer you is a sleep coaching program that is run by cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is basically where it is you have a sleep coach along with you for 6 to 8 weeks that will basically be helping you stay on target to help wind you down the day, to help make more concerted or wise choices where it pertains to what it is you may eat throughout the course of the day that may trigger a lack of being able to fall asleep easily in the evening, things to help, relax the mind and not keep it constantly stimulated. Because at that point there, a lot of us, that's what we deal with. We are constantly surrounded by this distraction called the phone,
Yes.
the TV, anything that emits blue light, that is completely anti-sleep stimulating. And that's what we also need to start to adapt within our wind down routine, or getting ourselves ready, or establishing proper sleep hygiene, so that our bodies are naturally, it enters that space of calm and sleep when the night comes.
You mentioned unwinding, and that's a very important point, because we go into now that sleep wake cycle that we have. The longer we stay awake during the day, as we come down to the afternoon or late evening into night period, that's when our body supposedly starts to unwind. But we do so many things to affect this process. What are some key things that we should not do coming down to that time where we need to try to fall asleep?
Right. So we like to check it as the 3-2-1 rule. So 3 hours before you're supposed to go to bed, you want to cut off all eating. You don't want to have that digestive system very active, because it's going to interrupt the quality of sleep. Your body has to focus on digesting food rather than winding you down and handling all it needs to handle while you sleep. 2 hours before bed, you want to stop all forms of mentally stimulating activity. So whether it is you may be reading a book, a very interesting book at that, whether you may be behind some work still at that hour, whether you may be doing whatever it is just to keep the mind completely up, or in a state of worry, or in a state of constant motion, you want to stop at 2 hours before bed.
Wait, so 2 hours before bed, we should not be doing any sort of reading and those things?
Ideally, this is where you're going to start to lock it up.
Right? So what are we supposed to do for 2 hours?
You're going to start to wind away and wait. So for 2 hours there, this is where it is you're going to get your bed ready and everything. You're going to make sure that your room is dark. Turn on the AC or the fan, just keep it at a very cool temperature. You don't want to, you want to use this time to really and truly be able to get everything prepared. If you want to have maybe like a wind down bath, maybe you want to drink a little chamomile tea, so that is fine.
The reason why I was so concerned is because, to me, I thought I was doing a good thing, right before bed, reading instead of using my phone or iPad. I thought, that was the better alternative. But now you're saying 2 hours.
Well, anything that's mentally stimulating. So
it should be a boring book.
You can probably read a boring book if it is if you think you're maybe more inclined to pick up your phone closer to bed or so. Yeah, but the 1 hour before bed is where you don't want to pick up your phone at all, or so you want to actually lock off all blue light devices. So even if all around that time, you just want to stop mentally stimulating activities. And then the 1 hour is you put down your phone, and this is where you kind of really get the body and mind prepared for bed, whether you do the breathing exercises, whether you take a warm shower, and this is where you're going to, engage in whatever little activities that help basically, prepare you for bed.
So that's the ideal. But realistically, I feel like for most of us, we may not actually be able to do the 2 hours, not reading, not doing those things, and then an entire hour without our phones. What then would you suggest for persons who are trying to make small steps but cannot commit to that 2 hours and 1 hour before bed? How can they at least make a start in that direction?
So it doesn't have to be hard and fast, right? Because that naturally, if it is we're now adapting to sleep, you don't expect to do something like cold turkey and just 3 hours, 2 hours, 1 hour. Start with, even if it's just maybe 15 minutes before you cut off your phone, right? Maybe half an hour before you stop any kind of work mentally stimulating activities. Maybe 45 minutes before you have your last meal. Because realistically, once you start making these steps towards it, you find it's going to be easier, and your body is going to enter that realm where every evening or at a certain time when you start to train your body, you're going to be able to, or your body is going to start to naturally put you to sleep, or you're going to start to feel sleepy. You're going to adapt to that particular regime that you're building, which is going to be really good for your circadian rhythm, which is what you refer to as the sleep wake cycle.
Right?
Yeah. So once you have that in place, you find naturally your body is going to be inclined to sleep a little easier.
Something I did as well, and I realized it was a terrible idea, was exercise late evening into night, like do like a full run, and then to sleep was problematic. So what are some other like sleep hygiene tips that you would recommend, especially with those things? Some persons after work, you do a few things and then you exercise and immediately try to sleep. Is that something you would recommend?
Oh, definitely not. Because your body is going to take a little while before it cools down fully and enters that space of full calm. Your heart is going to take a while to slow down. And part of, the sleep process, as we spoke about before, is where your heart slows and your body temperature drops. You don't want to keep your body in such a phase of activity. So I would say, let's just say your bedtime is maybe 9:30, 10 p.m. at night.
Sounds beautiful.
Let's just say. So all around that, you want to have your exercise happen, let's just say about maybe 3:30, 4:30 in the afternoon, and you run it for maybe about an hour and a half. So by that time, you're able to have your last meal for the evening, or you begin having it that 3 hours before. And then you can do the relaxing exercises where it is after a while 2 hours before you can then shut off the mentally stimulating, and so it falls in naturally.
So then, Aneisa, what should our room look like?
Dark. Right? You want to keep it dark. You want to keep it cool. You want to just have like the most comfortable atmosphere, the most comfortable vibe. Yeah, very snuggly. Just to keep get your mind in order. Because remember, if it is we're looking at it from a scientific perspective too, you can't really have the time for your body to wind down being nighttime and it's giving daylight. You don't want to have that.
There should be a complete difference basically between your waking hours to when you're asleep. So light versus darkness.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier as well a little bit about what ISD Solutions do and the services that you offer. Is there anything else that you would like to mention? Any special events or research or anything that's upcoming?
Of course. So we actually we are preparing for our Sleeptember campaign, which is a time frame where it is we generally bolster our efforts in terms of education and awareness surrounding sleep health and surrounding just creating further content to help persons achieve the best sleep of their life or as best as they can get it. Right now, we are proud to mention that we are working on a research study in collaboration with the Diabetes Association of Trinidad and Tobago and the University of the West Indies. So we would like to call all interested persons who are suffering with diabetes to be a part of this study. We have a link, a landing page where it is you'll be able to click and fill out your information to be a part or to join. And this is a research study that is going to be free of charge for all participants. We're looking for ideally maybe 200 participants or as many as we can possibly get. It's going to inform a lot for us in terms of the information that we have out there specific to the Caribbean region, mainly Trinidad and Tobago, as to the prevalence and severity of obstructive sleep apnea and the impact that has on persons with diabetes.
Thank you so much, Aneisa. Thank you for sharing that, and I am looking forward to reading about it. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge on sleep health.
My pleasure.
As we said earlier, it's not something that's spoken about as a topic on its own. We tend to just, stick it in here and there, but it's not something that we focus on. Okay, Aneisa, I want to have the best, and I mean the absolute best sleep of my life. 3 tips.
So you want to have your room very cool, very dark, very quiet. You want to make sure you have your last meal ideally 3 hours before it is you go to bed. And consistency is key. You want to make sure that you maintain the same sleep-wake cycle. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, even on weekends. That's sleep.
Oh, that's tough, the weekends one. But thank you so much, Aneisa. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Remember, as much as we prioritize exercise and physical activity, we also need to prioritize our sleep. So, thank you everyone, and see you next time.